Philip Seymour Hoffman was a master of complex characters, perhaps because in his real life he faced down a number of personal demons. Hoffman died tragically in 2014, but was turning out meaningful, compelling work until the very end.
I am a writer, a doctor, a nuclear physicist, a theoretical philosopher. But above all, I am a man.
In September 2012, writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson released The Master, his fifth and final collaboration with Philip Seymour Hoffman. The critically acclaimed drama starred Hoffman as Lancaster Dodd, the charming, paternal, and inscrutable leader of The Cause, a shady religious movement turned cult, rumored to be based on L. Ron Hubbard and the Church of Scientology. The Master earned accolades on the film awards circuit, for Hoffman's performance in particular. He was nominated in the Best Supporting Actor category by every major body, including the Academy Awards, the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and the Golden Globes. But Hoffman took home just one trophy, the Critics' Choice Award. He did, however, earn the top prize for supporting actor from multiple film critics associations, including the Chicago Film Critics Association, the Florida Film Critics Circle, the Kansas City Film Critics Circle, and the London Critics Circle.
He said, "You don't know who I am?" And I said, "No, what do you do?" And he said, "I'm a heroin addict."
The specter of addiction haunted Hoffman for the entirety of his adult life. In his 20s, he drank heavily and dabbled in heroin, which sent him to rehab at the age of 22. He remained in therapy and attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings for many years after. In 2017, Hoffman's wife, Mimi O'Donnell, told Vogue, "Being sober and a recovering addict was, along with acting and directing, very much the focus of his life, but he was aware that just because he was clean didn't mean the addiction had gone away." Hoffman was clean for 23 years, but sometime in early 2012, he relapsed and found himself with a growing dependency on prescription medication. Over the course of the next year, Hoffman's addiction to pills segued into an addiction to snorting heroin. Realizing that his behavior was becoming unmanageable, Hoffman admitted himself to a drug detox and rehab center located somewhere in the eastern United States in early May 2013. 10 days later, Hoffman was released with a clean bill of health and headed for Europe to work on a movie. At the 2013 Cannes Film Festival, producers announced that filming was about to begin on an adaptation of the Pete Dexter novel God's Pocket. The film was set in a working-class community where a man tries to conceal the truth about the death of his stepson. Hoffman was cast in the role of the dad. The film was shot in and around New York during 2013 and premiered at the 2014 Sundance Film Festival. Hoffman, who was there to support the film, told Flicks in the City, "I got to work with some people I really admire greatly." That year at Sundance, Hoffman was doing double duty. Also on the festival calendar was the spy drama A Most Wanted Man.
German intelligence needs a job to be done that German law won't let it do.
The film explores the turbulent relationship between Chechnya and Russia. Hoffman played a Chechen refugee and anti-terrorist agent on the run from Russian spies who manages to escape to Germany.
I've been in musicals at school ever since I was a little kid. You know, I was Prince Jelongkorn in The King and I.
Before he became a movie star, Hoffman was a prolific theater artist. In the early 1990s, he helped found the small off-Broadway collective The Labyrinth Theater Company. He directed, produced, and starred in some of its early productions, eventually stepping up as the company's artistic director. Hoffman left the position in 2009.
Here's the deal, I'm the star of the show, okay? So if I decide to bust out a solo, do me a favor and give me the freedom to rock out.
After a very high-profile star turn as Willie Loman in a Broadway revival of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, for which he received a Tony Award nomination, he decided to scale back. So in 2013, he returned to Labyrinth to direct a production of the play A Family for All Occasions, written by his friend Bob Gladini. The show consumed Hoffman. Labyrinth managing director Danny Feldman told Rolling Stone, "From the napkin holder on the dining room table, every minute detail was debated and thought out."
Philip Seymour Hoffman has been the most challenging director that we've ever worked with in the most exciting possible way.
It would be Hoffman's final work. In June 2013, production got underway on the period thriller Child 44. The film was an adaptation of Tom Rob Smith's hit novel of the same name. It was about a military police officer in the post-war Soviet Union who becomes obsessed with tracking a serial killer who targets children. The movie, his first film role since The Master, was already filming when Hoffman joined the cast, which also included Tom Hardy and Gary Oldman. But 2 months into the shoot, Hoffman abruptly dropped out. Vincent Cassell stepped into the role and filming continued, with neither the producers nor the studio disclosing the reason for the change. Child 44 was released in 2015 with no trace of Hoffman's performance and ended up being a box office flop. Back in 2012, Hoffman signed on to the second installment of the Hunger Games franchise, Catching Fire.
This is Plutarch Heavensby, head game maker, successor to Seneca Crane.
On and off throughout 2012 and 2013, Hoffman spent weeks on the Hunger Games set. When he died, he'd completed his work on Mockingjay Part 1, but there were still 2 dialogue-heavy scenes left to shoot in Part 2. Director Francis Lawrence re-scripted those scenes, doling out the dialogue to various other actors in order to tell the full story. Entering his 40s in 2005, Hoffman fell into somewhat of an extended midlife crisis, according to his wife, Mimi O'Donnell. Between Hoffman's anxiety and the traumatic death of his therapist of many years, Hoffman sought out prescription painkillers, but managed not to use them, at least at first. But in 2012, during a break between jobs, Hoffman relapsed and became addicted. He tried to quit on his own without help, but the process was so agonizing that O'Donnell checked Hoffman into a rehab center in early 2013. This time, it didn't work. Within 48 hours of his release, Hoffman was using again. His behavior at home became so unstable that his 3 children noticed and were upset about it. This led O'Donnell to ask Hoffman to move out. He found an apartment located nearby, and O'Donnell prepared to end the marriage.
Did this place come furnished?
Hoffman's new living situation gave him more opportunities to use heroin, and in the fall of 2013, his addiction progressed to the point where he needed another 3 months in rehab. In early 2014, he headed to Atlanta to shoot the Mockingjay movies, and once again, when he returned home, O'Donnell set up another stretch in rehab for him. This one, however, wouldn't come to pass. 3 days after returning to New York, Hoffman died of a drug overdose.
The secret is laughter.
The vast majority of Hoffman's acting work was in film and theater, but that was about to change. In January 2014, Hoffman signed on to Happyish, Showtime's dark comedy series by author Shalom Auslander. Hoffman was set to play the show's central character, Tom Paine, an advertising executive approaching middle age who experiences dissatisfaction and depression as he examines his comfortable existence and finds it lacking. The network only agreed to make the show after Hoffman was attached. Most of the first season's scripts for Happyish had been written, but shooting had not yet begun when Hoffman was found dead in February 2014. Production was delayed for nearly a year, and Steve Coogan eventually took over the role meant for Hoffman.
I work on the films, sometimes. So if you ever,
Over the years, Hoffman directed plenty of stage plays, but only one movie, the 2010 indie romantic drama Jack Goes Boating. In 2013, Hoffman quietly began to prep for his sophomore directorial effort, Eliza Moss, screenwriter Keith Bunnan's rural supernatural thriller set in the 1920s. The script had been knocking around Hollywood for a couple of years before Hoffman discovered it. He worked closely with Bunnan on rewrites and pre-production, eventually deciding he wanted to direct the movie. On January 31, 2014, A-listers Jake Gyllenhaal and Amy Adams were announced as the film's co-leads. 2 days later, Hoffman was dead. The film was in limbo for nearly a decade until filmmaker James Gray took it on. But as of 2025, Ezekiel Moss has yet to begin production. While Hoffman was professionally reclusive and he rarely agreed to sit for interviews, he didn't hide from the public. He was a familiar presence in Greenwich Village, where he, his wife, and 3 children lived. Hoffman enjoyed spending as much time as possible with his family when he wasn't shooting on location, and was often seen walking with his kids, going to restaurants, or hanging out with his wife in quiet bars. Most Saturdays, Hoffman could be found at the Chelsea Piers gym, watching his son Cooper's basketball practice. Photographer Victoria Will, who took some of the last photos of Hoffman, told People, "He seemed great. He was just a regular guy, which is what I've always loved about him." But Hoffman's bouts of public intoxication were also seen and remarked upon. He and his son frequented a restaurant called Oliver's. They'd hang out together for hours, and after he would take Cooper home, he'd return to drink into the night, silent and alone. One village resident saw him struggling to navigate the streets, and he had to be helped into his building because he was so intoxicated. On the evening of February 1st, 2014, Hoffman went to dinner with friends at a local place called Automatic Slims. That night, he stuck to cranberry soda rather than beer, but later reportedly withdrew $1,200 from an ATM near his home, flanked by 2 unidentified men.
Our spirits live on in the whole of time, exist in many vessels, through time.
On the morning of February 2nd, 2014, Hoffman was supposed to go see his 3 young children at O'Donnell's apartment. When he didn't show up, a concerned O'Donnell started calling on friends and associates to check on him. Hoffman's personal assistant and a friend went to the residence, where she found Hoffman in the bathroom, deceased, with a syringe still in his arm. He was 46 years old. In the initial crime scene investigation, police found 49 small bags of heroin, 23 containers with traces of heroin, indicating the drugs inside had been used, 4 bags full of what was presumably cocaine, and several prescription drugs. In late February 2014, the New York City Medical Examiner's Office delivered its autopsy findings. They concluded that Hoffman died from a fatal overdose of drugs that included cocaine, heroin, amphetamines, and prescription anti-anxiety medications. Hoffman's history with substance abuse and his attempts at sobriety were well known to the public before his February 2014 death by overdose. The actor's death and the particular nature of it inspired a writer who'd also struggled with addiction to make a movie on the subject. Author Luke Davies published Candy, a novel of love and addiction, then adapted the book into the screenplay for the 2006 movie Candy, pulling from his own experiences. In 2014, Davies was in the running to adapt 2 memoirs, each by a father and son and both about the son's drug abuse, into one screenplay to be called Beautiful Boy. Initially, he didn't want the job because he didn't want to revisit the themes of candy so soon. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, Davies explained, "Then Philip Seymour Hoffman died and my father wrote me an email mentioning it and saying, 'Luke, there are times when this family feels very blessed.' He was talking obliquely about my own history with addiction. The email shifted everything for me." Hit hard by the loss of Hoffman to drugs and wanting to explore a father-son relationship, Davies agreed to write Beautiful Boy, which was released in 2018 starring Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet. If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.